So in this video, I'll teach you the most important things that I learned about chess, and some of these took me way too long to realize. The truth is, if you don't follow these simple concepts that I'm about to teach you, you have no chance at improving at chess at all. I'm going to play against a 2300 bot on chess.com, and he opens with pawn to e4. Now for openings, this is the first thing we have to discuss. I would recommend you to play solid openings. I wouldn't recommend you to play any kind of crazy gambits. That is because those will require a lot of study. And they are also just not sound often. Like often gambits are just not sound. And if your opponent knows what to do, he will destroy you. Playing solid chess, trust me, you will thank me. You will thank me if you stop playing your weak gambits. If you're, for example, playing with like the England gambit, that is not a good move. D4, E5 is not a good move, and you're never going to become a serious chess player if you continue doing this. Pick yourself a serious opening and study it a little bit, but don't overdo it, okay? Don't overdo it. I picked the Caro-Kann. Why do I say don't overdo it? Because sometimes you're just studying opening too much, and especially at different levels, it doesn't really matter. So this position is very interesting. This is a variation of the Caro-Kann that can be very dangerous for both players. My opponent played pawn to f3. And here's the first thing I'm going to teach you. In chess, you have files and you have diagonals. With this move, pawn to f3, we're going to see this diagonal, this file open up, because after d takes e4, f takes e4 is going to be played. And now this diagonal towards the king is very weak. Why is it very weak? Well, a moment ago there wasn't pawn, so the king had shelter. But like this diagonal is very weak. Same thing for this diagonal, if the king decides to castle. But the advantage in his position is, I mean, for the move f3, it's not a losing move or anything. The advantage is that the file opens up, right? You can imagine this rook castling, and then the file opens up. The second advantage, obviously, is that you get to keep 2 pawns in the center despite me attacking it with d5. Now we are immediately going to strike at the center with pawn to e5. And this seems like a free pawn, but it's not. This is because of this diagonal. The diagonal is weak, and then I could go queen h4 check, g3, and this would already win the rook. Now knight f3 is covering the square, and now we have to go bishop to g4. This is just a theoretical move, and immediately he's going to go bishop c4. I told you this bishop will try to go on a, or I didn't tell you, but this bishop will try to get on a good diagonal. And already we have to play knight d7. This is the onlyest move to not lose. And now he decides to castle. Castling is probably really good because you put more pressure on this f7 pawn. And here you have to already be careful. Even in this position, you have to be really careful to not lose to bishop takes f7. For example, knight to f6 here. Bishop takes f7, king takes, and then the knight will take. And then after king goes back, and you just win. The knight is pinned right now, but if there's a king on f7, the knight checks here. So we have to be careful about the same thing, but it wouldn't actually work now because the knight is defending this e5 pawn. That is important detail. And after this bishop goes here, we go bishop to d6, continuing our development of this bishop. And now pawn to h3. Next thing we have to talk about is trades. In this position, I could trade off my bishop for a knight. And a lot of people, like 90% of people watching this, will just think, okay, bishop, knight, 3 points. Easy, same. But the bishop-knight trade is never an equal trade. Even a knight for a knight trade is not an equal trade. Why? Because pieces are sometimes better placed, and pieces are sometimes worse placed, and in some positions, some pieces are better than others. For example, in this position. You know that bishops are better in open positions than in closed positions. In closed positions, knights are better. This kind of position is very open. Or maybe it's going to get even more open, but it's very open because the center is already very open. This can get even more open. So I would actually say this is probably very, very open. So already probably bishops are going to be a little better. Second of all, if I just take here, then the queen captures, and this is even stronger. So I don't think taking here would be a good move. The advantage of taking is that the pressure from this pawn is released. So after bishop h5, he might be going g4, but he also might not. So we will see. g4, okay, he's not going g4. If g4 is played, then you have to realize two things. g4 is attacking the bishop. Obviously, you have to retreat. But this is the next thing we have to talk about. Every time you make a pawn move, g4, it weakens something and it strengthens something, okay? This g4 move strengthens this square and this square. But it weakens the h3 and this square, and it leaves this square also weakened. So g4 would make a lot of weaknesses in front of your king. When I was a beginner, I always loved to push these pawns. But at some point I realized that this was just creating too much weaknesses around my king. So I stopped doing this. Now in this position, we can castle, finish up our development. And he actually now plays this g4 move. And after this, we will see what we will play. Okay, he goes knight to h4. Knight to h4 is an interesting move. It really wants to get this bishop here. And I think it might be a very good move. Obviously, if this bishop were to take, okay, in this case there's a pin here, but always take towards the center. Capture towards the center. That's a rule. If you have to capture back a piece, and with a pawn, capture towards the center. So we would take back with this pawn. And now we can either finish up our development, and I'm going to do that with queen to c7. Queen to c7 gets out of this pin, and it also protects this pawn once more. So it's quite a nice move. Queen to d3 is a crazy move. I already see tactics here. And we talked about fires and diagonals already. These two guys are on a diagonal. And if you put a bishop and a queen on a diagonal, this is called a battery. In this position, if he were to go d takes here, queen takes here, bishop h2 check, would already be almost winning the game. Because now if the king goes here, okay, I don't know, the queen can come in. But is it that strong? I don't know. I don't know if it's that strong, but I think I will definitely take here. That's for sure. And now he actually takes here again. Okay. I guess he can do that. We are going to take back with the knight. And now he decides to also take here. That is completely fine. And he actually respects that and not plays queen takes here, because then I get bishop takes in here. And then my queen is going to come in, and he is going to feel the disadvantage of g4. If the pawn was still on g2, let's say he still had a pawn on g2, then bishop here and then king here, and it wouldn't be a threat. Why wouldn't it be a threat? Because, well, my queen could come here, but it wouldn't really be a threat, right? This is the huge disadvantage of these type of moves. Now he's playing here. And I think I want to defend my pawn. I want to go pawn to c5, defending my pawn, and now I've won a pawn, and I'm up a pawn, okay? I've won an extra pawn. So now we're in a position where we don't really know what to do. There are a lot of good moves. I mean, bishop here is probably a good move. a6 is probably a good move. The rooks, bring the rooks to the center is a good move. And in these types of positions, how do you decide what to play? I call these types of positions positional decisions. There are another types. There are also tactical decisions. We have no tactics in this position. Strategical decisions. We don't make any huge strategical decisions in this moment. So rook c8, for example, or rook e8, if you have to make a positional decision, ask yourself 3 questions. Number 1, what are the weaknesses of my opponent? This is really weak here. Also, this is kind of misplaced. Also, obviously, this pawn on e4 is really weak. The second one is, what is my worst piece? And the third one is, does my opponent have any threat? My opponent has no threat, okay? So, the e4 pawn is weak, and I have to improve my worst piece. My worst piece is kind of this rook on a8. So, I kind of want to put it here. Why don't I put this rook here? Because this rook is not so bad. It's actually defending this f7 square. And that can actually be really valuable. So I'm actually going to go here. Now, there could be a threat by my opponent. I just realized that pawn to e5 could be played, and after rook takes, he actually has queen takes g6. Why? Because this bishop is actually here pinning. But in this particular position, it wouldn't work, because after takes, bishop, queen takes, we would take this knight here, and after the bishop takes back, the pin is gone, and we would take the queen. So in this particular position, it wouldn't work, which is why we can play this. Now, he defends this once more, his pawn, because his pawn was attacked again. But we can just take here. And again, this is a trade. So takes, 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 takes is a trade. And again, you have to ask yourself, is this trade good for me, or is this trade bad for me? The trade is good. Why? Because you win a pawn. And then we have won 2 pawns. We have won two pawns in his position. And that is going to basically already win us the game. If you're up material, what are you supposed to do? If you're up material, you're supposed to trade. If all of these pieces disappeared magically, this pawn and this pawn would just run and make a new queen, and we would win easily. So we have to try to trade. And in this particular position, it's not just a trade, it's also winning another piece, because here we have a fork, and it's winning this bishop. I'm wrong. I'm completely wrong, because it's actually the take on the e8 square, and after we take here, we get our trade. We're happy because we get our trade, and now there's only one rook left. And this is now a rook endgame. So in endgames, obviously material matters. Material is probably the most important thing, but also activity. My rook is really active already on this open file. His rook is not really active. His king is also not active. So let's actually go rook here. That is actually cutting off the king from getting back into the game, and he's already playing these kind of moves, trying to get his king back into the game. But I think I can now also go here, and this is also just winning another pawn. Maybe he can defend, but yeah, now we see again activity. My rook is really active. He's not. His rook is not active, and now we go even here, restricting the king even more. And now the king has actually no legal moves in this position. And now we have to try to bring our own king, right? We could already try to make pass pawns, and I'm going to do that with the move pawn to f5. He's going to take en passant, but then we just get our better pawn structure. And pushing pawns now in front of the king in this position is not as important or dangerous as it is when there are still queens on the board. So now we can just try to push our pawns and win the game. That is basically what you have to do in an endgame. Try to get your pawns all the way across to your opponent's camp. Now, he made a very interesting move, which is this one. We could now take this, but I think in this position, we don't even have to care about that. Our pawn is just going to be too strong, and after he takes, we're going to go there. His king is still completely cut off from any action, and after this, our pawn is almost promoting. His king has no play, and yeah, I think in this position, we can literally just walk our king up here, and we will win the position pretty easily. And we have to be careful though, because the king has no legal moves. We have to be really, really careful about stalemate tricks. Okay, I will go here, trying to win the pawn here. Okay, he went there. I will actually go here, I think, and this is just conversion now. And he always has a rook to move. Oh, okay, this can be. Oh, this is dangerous. Why is this dangerous? If I go here, rook here, for example, would already be a stalemate trap. Or rook here and then takes, the rook still can move, but then he has infinite check. So if I take this now, he has infinite check. The game is a draw. Why? Because after this, and then after this, he can check me there. And if I take, the game is a draw because he's in stalemate. So takes this, I say this. Can I run with the king? That's the question. Can I run with the king somewhere? No, I cannot. I cannot. Here it's even forced. So I cannot take that pawn, or else it's stalemate. And the best way to deal with this is to actually hide here. Now he's gonna, okay, he's not gonna try this. And now I'm going to go g5 check. And now I'm going to give the king squares. And after that, there are no stalemate tricks anymore, which means we can just push up our king. And in this position is very easy to win. His king is completely cut off. He's gonna go there, obviously. But I will keep this on this file, and losing this pawn is not a problem because we have 2 pawns here. And this is very easy. This doesn't require any sort of skill. I just need to be careful to still cut off his king, and then his rook has no chance defending alone against 2 pawns. This will take some sort of time. And obviously setting up a ladder checkmate is the fastest checkmate here. So yeah, this is over now. If you learned something from this video, hit the like and subscribe button right now, and try to use this advice in your own games, and tell me how it went in the comments. See you in the next video.